There comes a moment in life when you realize that you have been spending far too much energy explaining yourself to people who were never really interested in understanding you. You explain why you made a decision, why you walked away, why you stayed silent, why you changed, why you said no, why you chose yourself. And sometimes you even explain your intentions to people who have already decided what they want to believe about you. And the strange thing is, the more you explain, the more powerless you begin to feel. You think you are protecting your reputation, but slowly you are handing control of your peace to other people's opinions. The Stoics understood something that modern psychology continues to reveal. You cannot control how other people interpret you, but you can control whether you allow their interpretation to control your emotions. Epictetus taught that we should focus our attention on what belongs to us, our judgments, our choices, our actions, and stop trying to control what belongs to other people. Think about how much of your life is spent trying to be understood. Someone misunderstands your silence, so you explain it. Someone criticizes your decision, so you defend it. Someone accuses you of something you didn't do, so you immediately start building a case for yourself. Someone walks away believing a false version of you, and you feel desperate to correct the story. But ask yourself a difficult question. What if you didn't? What if you simply allowed people to believe whatever they wanted while you continued living according to your principles? This does not mean you should never explain yourself. There are moments when communication matters. Relationships deserve honesty, and misunderstandings should be clarified. But there is a massive difference between explaining something once with calmness and repeatedly defending yourself because you are afraid someone might judge you. The first comes from self-respect. The second often comes from insecurity. And this is where psychology becomes interesting. When you constantly explain yourself, you are often unconsciously asking another person for permission to feel okay about your own decision. You are saying, please understand me so that I can be comfortable with myself. But your emotional stability should not depend on receiving approval from everyone around you. Marcus Aurelius repeatedly reminded himself that other people's opinions were outside his control. He understood that a person could insult him, misunderstand him, criticize him, or judge him, but none of those things could damage his character unless he allowed them to influence his own judgment. Imagine standing in front of a crowd and trying to convince every person that you are a good person. You could spend your entire life doing it and still fail. One person will misunderstand you. Another will envy you. Another will project their own insecurities onto you. Someone will remember your worst mistake and ignore everything good you have done. Someone will create a story about you based on a single moment. And if you try to correct every story, you will never have time to actually live your life. This is why the Stoic approach is so powerful. Stop trying to manage your reputation and start managing your character. Your reputation is what people think you are. Your character is what you actually are when nobody is watching. And the difference between the two is freedom. You do not need to convince everyone that you are disciplined if you are disciplined. You do not need to announce that you are loyal if your actions consistently prove loyalty. You do not need to tell everyone that you have changed if your behavior demonstrates that you have changed. You do not need to convince people that you are strong. Real strength becomes visible through the way you handle pressure, rejection, disrespect, failure, and uncertainty. The insecure person constantly says, "Let me explain." The emotionally mature person knows when an explanation is useful and when silence is more powerful. Think about the last time someone misunderstood you. Maybe you felt an immediate urge to send a long message explaining everything. You wanted to make sure they knew your side of the story. You replayed the conversation in your head. You imagined what they might be saying about you. You wanted to prove that you were not the villain in their story. But here is the uncomfortable truth. Sometimes people do not misunderstand you because you failed to explain yourself. Sometimes they misunderstand you because understanding you would require them to change their opinion. And no amount of explanation can fix that. You could give them every fact, every reason, every piece of evidence, and they might still choose the interpretation that makes them feel comfortable. This is why the Stoic does not chase every misunderstanding. The Stoic asks, is this within my control? If the answer is no, they release it. This principle can completely change the way you deal with criticism. Imagine someone says, you think you're better than everyone. Your instinct might be to defend yourself immediately, but instead pause. Ask yourself, am I behaving arrogantly? Is there something useful in this criticism? If there is, learn from it. If there isn't, let it pass. You do not need to fight every accusation. You only need to make sure your own behavior is aligned with your values. This is emotional discipline. It is the ability to hear something unpleasant without immediately reacting. It is the ability to let someone misunderstand you without abandoning yourself in an attempt to correct them. It is the ability to walk away from an argument without feeling like you lost. Because sometimes, the strongest person in the room is not the one who wins the argument. It is the one who realizes the argument was never worth having. Seneca understood the value of protecting your mental energy. Your attention is a limited resource. Every unnecessary argument, every pointless explanation, every attempt to prove yourself consumes a piece of that resource. And when you spend your entire day responding to other people, you eventually lose contact with yourself. You stop asking, "What do I believe?" and start asking, "What do they think about me?" You stop living and start performing. You choose your clothes based on approval. You choose your career based on approval. You choose your relationships based on approval. You make decisions not because they are right for you, but because they will look good to other people. And then one day you realize you have built a life that impresses everyone except yourself. Stoicism asks you to reverse that process. Instead of asking, "How will this look?" ask, "Is this right?" Instead of asking, "Will they approve?" ask, "Does this align with my values?" Instead of asking, "How do I make them understand?" ask, "Have I acted with integrity?" These questions move your attention from external validation to internal character. And once you make that shift, something powerful happens. You become quieter, not because you are weak, but because you no longer feel the need to prove every part of yourself. You stop announcing every move. You stop defending every decision. You stop responding to every provocation. You stop trying to convince people who are committed to misunderstanding you. And this silence can feel uncomfortable. At first, because you may have spent years believing that silence means losing. But silence does not mean weakness. Sometimes silence means you have finally learned the value of your energy. There is a difference between being silent because you are afraid and being silent because you are disciplined. The first is suppression. The second is strength. When someone insults you and you immediately respond, they control your emotional state. When someone provokes you and you react exactly as they expected, they have successfully pulled your attention away from your own purpose. But when you pause, breathe, observe, and decide whether a response is actually necessary, you take the power back. That is the Stoic pause. Between what happens and how you respond, there is a space. Your freedom lives inside that space. You cannot stop someone from judging you, but you can stop yourself from becoming obsessed with their judgment. You cannot stop someone from talking about you, but you can refuse to make their conversation the center of your life. You cannot stop someone from leaving, but you can refuse to beg them to stay. You cannot control whether someone recognizes your value, but you can refuse to lower your value just because they failed to recognize it. This is one of the hardest lessons in emotional maturity. Not everyone deserves an explanation. Some people deserve communication. Some deserve a boundary. Some deserve distance. And some deserve nothing more than your silence. The mistake is treating every person as though they have earned access to your inner world. They haven't. Your reasons, your struggles, your dreams, your decisions, your personal growth, these things are not public property. You are allowed to keep some parts of yourself private. You are allowed to say, "This is my decision," without giving a 10-minute explanation. You are allowed to say no without writing an essay about why. You are allowed to leave without creating a courtroom defense for your departure. You are allowed to change without convincing everyone that the old version of you deserved to disappear. And perhaps the most powerful thing you can do is let your life become the explanation. If you say you are becoming disciplined, wake up and do the work. If you say you want peace, stop participating in unnecessary conflict. If you say you have changed, behave differently. If you say you respect yourself, stop chasing people who repeatedly disrespect you. If you say you value your future, make decisions your future self will thank you for. Your actions are louder than your explanations because actions cannot be argued with as easily. Someone may reject your words, but they cannot change the fact that you consistently showed up. They cannot change the discipline you built. They cannot erase the character you developed. This is why you should stop trying to win every conversation and start trying to win. The war within yourself. The real battle is not against the person criticizing you. The real battle is against your need to be understood by everyone. Once you defeat that need, you become incredibly difficult to manipulate. People can no longer control you simply by threatening to misunderstand you. They can no longer keep you trapped in endless arguments. They can no longer make you question yourself every time they disagree with you. You become grounded. You become calm. You become selective. And this is exactly what the Stoics were trying to cultivate. Not a person who feels nothing, but a person who is no longer controlled by every feeling. So the next time someone misunderstands you, pause before you explain. Ask yourself 3 questions. Is clarification genuinely necessary? Is this person open to understanding me? And will explaining myself improve the situation or simply feed my anxiety? If the explanation is necessary, speak calmly and clearly. If it is not, let your actions speak. If someone has already decided not to understand you, do not exhaust yourself trying to change their mind. Remember, your goal is not to be understood by everyone. Your goal is to live in a way that you can respect when you are alone with yourself. Marcus Aurelius did not wake up every morning asking how the world would judge him. He asked what kind of person he would choose to be. That is the question you should carry with you. Not, how can I make them understand me? But, how can I remain true to myself? Not, how can I prove that I am right? But, how can I act with wisdom? Not, how can I make them regret losing me? But, how can I build a life that does not depend on anyone staying? The moment you stop explaining yourself to everyone, you begin reclaiming something far more valuable than approval: peace. You realize that your life does not need a defense attorney. Your character does not need a public relations team. Your choices do not need unanimous approval. And your worth does not increase because someone understands it or decrease because someone refuses to see it. Let people talk. Let them misunderstand. Let them create their own stories. You have a life to live, a character to build, and a mind to protect. Explain yourself when it matters. Communicate when it creates understanding. Apologize when you are genuinely wrong. Learn when criticism reveals a weakness, but when the explanation becomes a desperate attempt to control someone's opinion of you. Stop, breathe, step back, and remember the Stoic principle. You control your actions, not other people's judgments. You do not have to attend every argument you are invited to. You do not have to correct every misunderstanding. You do not have to prove your worth to people who have already chosen not to see it. Sometimes the most powerful sentence you can say is nothing at all, and sometimes the strongest. Proof of who you are is simply the life you continue to live when nobody is applauding, nobody is watching, and nobody understands. That is where real strength begins.